Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Megan Swark. I am the Director of Reference Services here at the Schomburg Library, and we are very excited to have Debbie Kroopkin join us for assembling the pieces of your family history puzzle. Debbie is currently the co-president of the Jewish Genealogical Society of Illinois. She has explored her family history for over 2 decades and now conducts research for others. She has discovered her family origins in Ukraine, Poland, and Belarus. She has traced her clients' families to towns in these countries, as well as Lithuania, Moldova, Romania, and more. She loves the research hunt and connecting with new families, both in person and on paper, and she enjoys teaching about the unique aspects of Jewish genealogy research. We are very happy to have her joining us this evening, and for everyone who is registered, I will be emailing out the handouts. This presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to the library's YouTube channel afterwards, where it will stay until the end of this year. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Debbie. Thank you so much.
So I think for Zoom, I need to stay put over here. So I think the mic is a good idea. Ideally, you start with living people that you can talk to. And that doesn't have to be a relative. It could be a friend or a neighbor, a church member. So again, these folks I found from a tree that was posted on MyHeritage. MyHeritage has more international participants than Ancestry does, proportionately. And their tree did not have my great-grandpa because of communism. They lost touch. They knew there was somebody in the States, but they forgot his name because it was generations removed, right? But everything else matched up. I didn't know any of the other siblings' names, but I knew the parents, and I knew the town, and I knew about how old they were, so it matched perfect. And so now I'm in touch with my 2 Olga cousins in the color on the bottom. So now my database looks like this. Instead of just one child, I have all these children now that I learned about from this one tree that was online. So this is somebody else I found online. Actually, they found me. Lucia is a child survivor of the Holocaust. She was given away as an infant to a church, and then she was adopted, and she didn't know she was Jewish until probably her 40s. She came to Chicago and stayed with me, and you can see here that my grandma Millie and Lucia, Monica, are second cousins once removed. So it's not that distant, really. And I see a similarity with my grandma, who's in the middle, and Lucia. I don't know if you guys see it, but anyway, she doesn't speak any English. Friends of hers found me on Jewish Gen, which is a wonderful resource if you're looking for any Jewish relatives. It was called the Jewish Gen Family Finder, and you post your towns and your surnames, and people look for other researchers with the same towns and surnames. And that's how her friends found me. So after you talk to people, then you see what you can find. And again, not everything is online, not everything is free. You have to be prepared to spend a little money, so you definitely want to set your priorities on what you really want to know and what you really want to find. Well, these are the kinds of documents that genealogists look for that help tell their family's stories of their migration patterns, their immigration story, getting the vital information, things like that. So here's another great grandpa, Daniel Cutler. You can see how many different names he went by. And I'm gonna show you how I managed to track him, even though he kept changing his name. So the story is, this is kind of reverse psychology, but he wanted his name to sound more Jewish because he had a grocery store on the west side where all the Jewish people were at the time. So he wanted to be Cohen's Groceries so that everyone would know it was Jewish. So he changed his name to Cohen for a while from Cutler. So here he is coming over on the ship as Daniel Cutler, a butcher, 27 years old. He can read and write. This is a ship manifest. How many of you have seen a ship manifest before? Okay. If the later they came in time, the more detailed the ship manifests are. So after 1900, they're much more detailed. So like I say, find a cousin or relative who came after 1900 and you'll get a lot more specific information. So he said that he last lived in Yakovlev, and the nearest relative left behind is his wife, Rachaleah, in Yakovlev. So kind of going along this long manifest, it says he has $10, he paid for the trip himself, and he's going to a brother-in-law, Zybel Bosch's, with his address in Chicago. He's 5'3", and it says he was born in Yakovlev on the very far right, which is hard to see. So then, let's see, what year was that? 1909. 4 years later, his wife comes with her sister-in-law, his sister. So Rachaleah, Racha Cutler, and her sister-in-law, Menuchi, Bosch's, that's Daniel Cutler's sister, Menuchi. The two women come with their kids. And they come together. It's very cute, but it's 4 years later. And they're coming to their husbands that are already in Chicago. And Racha is leaving behind her father, Moshe Cutler. And Menuchi, that's actually her father-in-law. And Menuchi leaves behind her mother, Leah Cutler. So you know who they were closer to. But they're going to Chicago, and what's the funny part about this little story here, so here you get the addresses where the husbands are living in Chicago, where they're going to on the west side. But Rachaleah says that the kids were born in Colonia, and Menuchi says the kids were born in Yakovlev. Well, guess what? It's the same place. The colony of Jacob, Colonia, Yakovlev. But one refers to it as Colonia and the other refers to it as Yakovlev. I won't tell you how long that took me to figure out, but it took me a while because there was a maximum of 150 families in that town. It was a colony created by the Russians where you didn't have to pay taxes and the land was terrible, and they wanted to get the Jews out of the town so that they wouldn't compete with the merchants, and here you can have some farmland. So anyways, so here he is, our Daniel Cutler is now David Cohen in 1916, and he is declaring his intent to be naturalized. So this is part one of a three-part process. There's after 1906, this was standardized across the country. You get the declaration, then you get the petition, and then you'll get your certificate. So he's a grocer, but look, it says he was, now this is not his handwriting. So somebody's taking down the information and they hear Roloni. Well, it's Colonia, right? So we know that because we looked at the actual manifest and we got other documents. And here you get his signature, and it's these documents. So I'm going in chronological order, but really when you're doing the research, you're going in reverse chronological order, right? So these are the documents that can tell you the ship, these naturalization documents. So here in World War I, this is the draft card from 1918. So he has to fill out, he has to apply for he's drafted, and it's David Cohen, and he's a butter and egg dealer, and it tells you where he lives and where he works, which is the same place. So he's probably got a little apartment, and the bottom is the grocery and the top is where they lived, or the back or what have you. But now Rachel Leah Kotler is now Rose. So Rose was very popular. People took whatever name they wanted. A lot of times they kept the same first initial, but people experimented with different names. So here he is on the petition for naturalization, and I love this little question mark here. Daniel Kotler, also known as David Cohen. So this is part 2 of his application to become naturalized. Look at what a gold mine this is. It has all the kids, all their birthdays, where they were born, his birthday, sometimes his wife's birthday. Now, Rachele is Rachel. She's Rose, she's Rachel, it's still her. Still the same family. And there's that Roloni again. So this is a wonderful, wonderful document. And these are at the courthouses. You know, they're at the courthouses, and sometimes they're with National Archives, but they're easier to get through the courthouses. Where they lived at the time, which is why you want those census records, to know where they lived. This is just the bottom part, but I'm pointing this out because the witnesses could be, they could be neighbors, but they could be relatives. So it's very nice to look at the witnesses and see if you get any hints. Here he is in the city directory. The city directory fills in that time period between the 10-year census records. So you can go year by year by year in the city directories and see exactly where they lived and who might have been living with them at the same address. So you could find cousins or siblings that come and stay with them temporarily. You could find that kind of thing. And even some city directories will tell you when someone dies or when someone moves, or a lot of them, most of them tell you their occupation. So they're really excellent resources.
So Scramble, he's a butter and egg dealer.
Yeah, he's a grocer. Yeah, yeah. So so every census, as you may know by now, every census has slightly different questions on it. So it's really good. You can get the template of exactly what's being asked on the top. This one is from 1930, and it's telling us that he's paying $70 in rent. That's the R and the $70. And the address is on the side, and then the house number, and we get the ages, marital status, the age they were when they married, can they read, can they write, where they're from, and then going across where their parents are from, the language they speak, their occupations, when they came to the US, if they're naturalized, all of that is on the census record. So here it says that he immigrated in 1910, and that they came in 1914. Well, we just saw the ship, and it said 1909 and 1913, right? So you take this as a hint, because it's not a first person. This is a census taker, and it's somebody's memory, and they're, you know, they want to get them out of their house or whatever. You know, it's fast, and you know, not everything is always exactly the same, especially ages, because most people didn't know their birthday, right? So here, this is informally called the old man's draft. So for World War II, in 1942, they had older men sign up for war, just in case they needed to call them to serve. So he's already 58, but this is a great document for genealogists. But unfortunately, his place of birth is listed as Grodno. Now, Grodno is a city and a district and a gubernia, or a big region like Cook County or something, right? So he picks the big city. But he's the little country guy, right? But he picks I'm from the big city, or it's his region. But a lot of people from Schaumburg, but you might say, I'm from Chicago. If you're talking to somebody in another country, you'll say, I'm from Chicago. So that's very common. So the more records you have, from the more siblings you have, the better, because you get these little hints. So if you're looking for your town, where your family originated from, these are good resources. I showed you some examples, and I'm going to show you my favorite, which is when you applied for your Social Security card. So anyone who was alive after 1936, most people applied for a Social Security card. And yes, it costs money, and yes, you have to send away for it, but you can get a mother's maiden name, which is, and it's self-report. So I fill it out, I put in my parents' names, right? So it's a very, very good resource for mother's maiden name, and even father's original name. So it's one of my favorites. And actually, she signs it in Yiddish. So that was cute. She can't write English. So when you're searching for documents, of course, there are places online to search. And when you think about these big data sets like Ancestry or MyHeritage or whatever, they're just getting them from the archives. You can go straight to the archives. You don't have to go to Ancestry. It's Ancestry is fast and easy. They're not going to have everything. Family Search is free, and Family Search is run by the Mormons, and they've been collecting records. They have millions of microfilms that they've been digitizing, right? So they have a lot of records indexed on Family Search, a lot of records indexed. So that's a good place to explore. But really, the census records help you because you get them point in time, where were they when, and then it can help you narrow down to getting other information from those counties. So here's some of the paid sites. Again, some might be through the library here. And there are crazy genealogists that go to cemeteries and take pictures of the tombstones, and they put them online. And you can request a picture from them too, because these crazy volunteers will take your request and they'll go to the cemetery and take a picture for you. So it's their fun. It's their fun. And so this is what us genealogists do. So there might be a picture online. You might not even have to go to that town and trudge through the cemetery. You might find the picture online. Of course, you want to think about not just where they lived, but where they worshiped, what their job was, what kind of documents might be available about them. And, every town or region or state has a set of genealogy societies, historical societies, universities. Now there are digital libraries of newspapers, like there's a California Digital Newspapers Project, things like that. So I think especially during COVID, when they weren't having visitors at the libraries and the archives so much, they were digitizing. So you could have checked a year ago, but there could be hundreds of thousands more records online now than there were a year ago. So don't give up. And also just call the county. You don't have to be an expert on the computer. If you don't want to, you can just let your fingers do the walking, right? Through the yellow pages, and just call the libraries and archives and talk to people, because they like to help. You can get obituaries from libraries. Sometimes they'll charge you $5 or something, and they'll send you the obituaries. So they're great resources, of course. I found out that there Jewish and non-Jewish genealogists are using this database that is part of JewishGen, because they have kind of sound-X'd all the town names, prior names of towns and new names of towns, current names of towns, and you can see what the name was, at what point in time, what country it was in, what district it was in, because then it helps you hone in on what databases to look in and where the records are currently. So this is an example of looking for Sokolov, where my Rosenbaums came from, and I didn't know there were so many Sokolovs. So I had to go through more records to find out that it was actually Sokolov Podlasky. But so when I did find that out, then I can read a lot about it, but here's where it shows me the town name in different periods in time, the district, the province, and the country. So that helps me know which databases to check. And I can map it and see what was nearby, and I can read about it. That's just the bottom half of the program. So here's the tough lady who took care of the kids when her husband left for California, Mr. Kroopkin. And I like that picture because she was a tough cookie. So I sent away to the Polish archives and I asked for some vital records, and I paid a little money and they sent me the records. Now you could probably find these online, but you don't have to. You can ask them to do it for you. So this is her birth record. And here's her dad's birth record. He was a shopkeeper. So, and he was born in 1854. And then I get his name. Now in 1940, in the census in 1940, Goldie's by herself, but she's got her two kids are living with her and helping her out. And because she's not working, but her kids are helping pay the rent. So that's nice. And there's just so much information here. And then I really wanted to find Nathan, and it took me forever because look how it's Kroobkin in the top. Kroopkin. So I think I must have just looked for Nathan in Oakland County at the right age, and I managed to find him. I don't know. But sometimes, you know, the indexers do a bad job. Sometimes the census taker does a bad job, right? But I did find him. And look at all this information from the 1940 census. This is funny because it's like, he's not working, he's not assigned to work, he's not seeking work, he didn't have a job, unable to work. Like 20 different ways to tell me the guy's pretty poor. And is this thing coming out okay? Okay, we're good. Okay. All right, so here's Goldie. She meets a new guy, she gets married and lives happily ever after. So that's the marriage record in Chicago. Doesn't really tell you much, but other cities and states, marriage record could tell you a lot. Depends on the location. So here is a newspaper article about my great uncle Benny, and it tells me what my grandma wore to the wedding, because it says Mrs. Thelma Cohen, that's Daniel Cohen, David Cohen Cutler's daughter, Thelma, my grandma, she was the maid of honor. And then later on it says, the matron of honor wore a blue lace gown and carried an arm bouquet of talisman roses tied with blue tulle. So I know my grandma had blue eyes like I do, so I can totally picture her wearing blue. So this is 1935, and the newspapers were very detailed about family events. And so it's just wonderful. And the funny part, the long story short, is that the impoverished family from Chicago, the story is that they hid in a truck to not pay all of the tolls to get down to Kentucky for this wedding. And then here it is written like this elaborate big thing in in Louisville. So it was so ironic. Okay, so my grandma, she was not a famous person, but here she is with the sisterhood in the newspaper. So you can find your relatives in the paper and even their pictures, even if they're not famous. Thelma is here and right in the middle. So it's pretty cute. And then there's Grandpa High, and he was president of the B'nai B'rith for a while. So, I mean, he retired from Sears, so he wasn't a big wig in the community, in the, you know, in the business world professionally, but in the nonprofit, you know, social organizations, they were very active. So this is just another city directory example. I have to say this is out of order, but basically Goldie was with an abusive guy for a few years, and the city directories show me when she was with him and when she wasn't. The story is she kicked him out of the house, like literally. So here's Goldie's with him in 1937, but not in 1939. So to try to track Nathan, I looked through as many city directories as I could get a hold of for Oakland County. And And you can see he kept moving, and he's a tire dealer, a peddler, and he ends up at this hospital, and he is impoverished, and he ends up without a tombstone in the paupers section of the cemetery. They didn't even know he was there, but I saw it from his death certificate. So Jacob Immergluck, the one that you didn't get to hear, I went to the Mormons Family History Center, and I was able to get his birth record from 1877, because they, like I say, they go around the world and they took pictures of records. So they have an amazing amount of information through the family history centers and Family Search. Here's the ship he took in 1893, just the actual, you can find pictures of ships online. And here he is, an apprentice at age 16, coming over on that ship. And he has $2, and he's there for intending protracted sojourn to the United States. Then his uncle files for bankruptcy. He was the one that was teaching him how to be a jeweler, which I did not know this. Here's a nice marriage record in New York. See, because this tells you where he was born, the parents' names, the wife's name, where her parents' names. It gives so much more information. Of course, the signatures as well. Very nice. There's a lot of New York records that have gone online as well. City directory, again, I think after Jacob gets married, Morris hands over one location to him and starts working at a different location, starts another shop. This is what a naturalization paper looks like before 1906. It doesn't tell you near as much. And here's a Declaration of Intent, 1905. Again, doesn't tell you near as much, but it does say when he came to the US, although that is a ship manifest I've never found. Here, now when he petitions in 1908, that's when you get all the detail. So there's all the kids and their birth dates. So that's wonderful. New York and some other states had censuses on the 5s for a few years. So they had 1905, 1915, and 1925 in New York, which is wonderful. So what cracked me up here is Jacob's with his new wife and a new baby. He's a jeweler. And he's with his father-in-law, who owns a candy store. And his two brothers-in-laws are furriers. So in 1905, on the Lower East Side, they have a servant. They have a servant, which is crazy. I had heard that there might have been a baby who died, and I was able to find that death certificate. My grandma's sister, she lived 16 days. I was able to find that. And here's Jacob with the World War I draft card. Now he is in Chicago on South Wabash in the Diamond District. And here's the 1920 census, which says when they came and when they naturalized, they can read and write, ages, all the kids. Here he is, diamond broker, owns his own business. This is my grandma Millie's birth record from Garfield Park Hospital on the west side. And then I went to the west side and I found their house and I took a picture. So now you can go on Google Maps and you could look around you. You could go anywhere in the world. If the Google drivers have gone and take pictures, you could go anywhere in the world and look around the neighborhood. But I did drive there and I did take the picture. Then I went to LA and I found pictures that I've never seen before or since, or any other pictures of them. These are my great-great-grandparents that I didn't even know came to the country when I first started. And they followed, this is the guy who owned the candy store in New York, and he followed his furrier sons to LA. And so they died in the 20s in LA. So they were pretty adventurous for or great-great-grandparents to go out to LA. They look very sweet. So that was on their tombstones, and I didn't know. And I was very lucky because that place has been vandalized, so I was lucky. Here's the family in 1930. Around 1930, my grandma's the youngest, so she's about 7, and then her mom passes when she's like 8 years old. This is her death certificate from Chicago in 1931. And then this was a big secret. Jacob went to New York and married a cousin and brought her back hoping she'd take care of the kids. And it turns out in less than a year, she dies. She's a sickly woman, it turns out, so the kids were helping take care of her. And they never talked about her because she wasn't around for very long. But I didn't even know she existed until I started doing research. So this is the kind of thing that volunteers do. They index the records and they put them on the internet for you. Of course, if you see a name that looks weird, you have to look at the original to see what it really is, and try to make it out yourself. So here's the expanding family. Here's my mom and my grandma Millie and all the kids in 1944 with my grandpa's serving. And there's Millie in the middle with all her brothers, probably in the 60s. So one thing that a lot of people want to know about DNA tests, and the long and short answer is, if you have a mystery that you want to solve and you cannot solve it with the paperwork, then the DNA test could help you. It augments the trees. It doesn't always take the place of the trees, but it can help solve mysteries with the trees. If you want to play with numbers and roll the dice in terms of DNA, but you have to be ready for anything because there could be surprises that you don't want to know about. So I like to use software to organize all my information. You want to be able to show it and share it with other people, not just keep it to yourself. So there is software, there's some free, there's some that cost. Again, it's in your handout. And here's some of the things that you can print with this software. You can make different reports. So this is a pedigree chart with my grandma, her parents and grandparents. This is called an hourglass tree, so it has ancestors and descendants. You could say how many generations. Here's a family group sheet, so you can have a couple and all their kids and put whatever facts you want to include. You're just pushing a button and poof, you get the report because it's all pulling from a database. This is called an outline descendant report. And here's different ways you can share information. We've talked about some of these. Some people like paper, some people like digital, some people really want a lot of pictures, some people want to see documents, some people don't. So there are lots of discussion groups online. There are online and in-person classes like this, and there are local societies where you could attend more workshops. So something that you can do in the future. So I can take some more questions, and I thank you so much for listening. So,
That was very good.
thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it was actually imposed on me. I'm adopted, I'm an international adoptee, and my birth mother found me in 1999, and I had never had any intention or desire to meet her. And she contacted me through a translated letter when I was in college. I was playing soccer on a scholarship, and it just totally, I don't know, some people discriminate against people with mental illness, but that was my introduction to mental illness with bipolar disorder, because there was such stress, and I couldn't believe what was happening. As soon as my adoptive mom, I called her my real mom, she taught me what love is. My birth mom gave me life, but my real mom, she taught me that it was the heart, how to love. And that was my introduction to mental illness, was when my birth mom contacted me. I was like, whoa. And it triggered my first full-blown manic episode. So I hope no one here stigmatizes because I just shared that I had mental illness. Abraham Lincoln, Mr. Shelton, Princess Di, they all had mental illness, and they're world leaders. I'm not saying I'm gonna be a world leader, I'm not.
Right, right. It's very important to step delicately when you're contacting people, because they may or may not want to have anything to do with you.
Right.
So it's a delicate thing, and you have to try to think from their perspective.
And the thing is, I was gonna say, I asked her, is there any history, we wrote back, ever since
Yeah.
1999 till now, we still keep in touch.
Yeah,
But I asked her, is there any history of illness, physical or mental, in our?
good
family?
question. That's important. Yep,
What is going on if I got bipolar disorder?
Yep.
Do we have history in our family of mental or physical illness? It's a perfect health.
oh, of course.
Is there something wrong?
Well, in some countries, mental health is even more stigmatized than in this country, and people don't call it mental illness. They call it something else, or, they discount it, they put it aside, so depending on the culture, that may not own that like ever, even though it's there.
Korean, Southside,
Yeah,
South Korean.
even if it's there, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
so yeah, I hear you. Yes, ma'am.
So, I don't know, I'm just looking at the names of some of these sites. Where would you suggest I could start looking for Black history or Black ancestry? Is there a certain site?
That's a good question. There may be specific genealogy societies, but everyone's supposed to work backwards. So you have to start with you and your parents, your grandparents. So you want to look for them in the census records, and trace backwards, because everyone's documented for a while. Once, I don't know how long your family's been here, but if you're going way back, then eventually, they're not going to have a name. They're going to be a number at some, you know what I mean? So, but you have to work slowly backwards, just like everybody. But there's probably like legacy. There's legacy webinars. I think they have a lot of free talks that they give on different topics. So, but also, so Family Search has a wiki, so a research wiki. So you can just go to like African American research, and they'll have like tutorials, and they'll have websites, and like any country or topic that I don't know where to go, I go to the Family Search Research Wiki, and WIKI, right. On the Family Search website, you have to like create a login, which is free, and then you go to the Research Wiki, and it will bombard you with possibilities. Yeah.
I take this opportunity to add that the Shelburne Library is a family search affiliate, so we link to family search from our website. If you're interested in family search via our website, we also, in our, actually in the library, because
Yeah.
controlled, we do have access to some of the microfilm digitization beyond the free-site.
Right, because there's like 3 levels of access. So there's what you can get from home, there's what you can get at an official library, which this is considered one of the official libraries, so that's the second layer. And then the third layer is you have to be at Salt Lake City to get it. So you get 2 layers if you come here to do the research on site. Yes, ma'am?
At some point you don't have anybody else to talk to, right? So how do you find your family when the names are spelled wrong, and the years they came over are wrong, and then how they came from is wrong? I mean, how did you even find all that information?
Right, so that's what I was hoping that I was showing, because you
look for him, right?
so if you get stuck on a person, then you have to go lateral, go to their siblings. Don't get stuck on a person, go for their siblings, go for cousins, get as many relatives as you can, because like some women didn't have as many documents as the men did, right? So if you can't find your grandma, look for her brothers, right? So the more documents you get, the more you can correlate and be like, okay, this butter and egg dealer is the same grocer, this address is the same address. You know what I'm saying? So the more documents you get, the better, because that's the puzzle. You're putting together a puzzle. and nobody knew their birthdays. You'll see a lot of birthdays, July 4th, January 1st, December 25th, okay? Or they took the 15th of the month or the 1st of the month. They did not know. So there could be a 5-year range on a birthday, okay? They did not know. So nothing's gonna be exact, you know? You just gather as much information as you can. Yes, ma'am?
I know that my mother's father, that would be my paternal grandfather, changed the spelling of their name. And my mother had told me that they had owned a bakery at one point. And I was trying to find out where the bakery may have been. Is there a way to research that?
So you saw spellings and names, you know, they can change. But the census, you got to narrow it to a place. Are you talking about in the US or somewhere else?
In the United States.
In the United States. So there's also stories about name changes that aren't necessarily true. So what you want to do is trace backwards. Find your parents in the census record, then find your grandparents in the census records. Because that naturalization paper, most people, when they change their name, they did it on the naturalization document. So that's a really good document to get. But sometimes you'll just see the name change through the census records, and because the tools will do how it sounds, you know, you can sometimes find it even if it's slightly different spelling. But all those documents you saw, a lot of them had the occupation. The city directories could have, you know, an ad for the bakery, you know, could have the name of the bakery next to his name. You saw it sometimes, well, not so much in these, but you could get the name sometimes from the city directory from where they live. So the census directors is every 10 years, but the city directories are in between. And that can tell you sometimes the name of the bakery, kind of a thing.
So the city directory?
The city directory,
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a city directory.
That's before telephone books.
Oh.
So it's the equivalent of a telephone book, the yellow pages and the white pages smushed together. And so sometimes they go by street, by the street and everyone who lived on that street, or the business, like grocers and all the grocers. And then they'd also have you alphabetically with your name, and they'd have an R for residence and a B for business or whatever. And so no phone numbers, just where, you know, and sometimes it'll say, like one of mine said, removed to New York. So they moved. Or it'll keep the widow, and it'll say in parentheses, widow of Jacob or whatever, like, so you know he died between the last time you looked and this time, right? So it like kept track of what was going on for people. And that's when you can find siblings working together, or cousins working together, living in the same house, and until, you know. So those can be very rich resources. Yes.
I think it's kind of interesting, what exactly are we searching for? You know, we kind of are seeking out our relatives and our genealogy, we're finding others, and we're kind of finding ourselves at the same time. You know, we have a sense of belonging when we find others.
Right.
And then we're gaining a sense of identity and who we are.
Exactly.
You know, but when we're searching for others, we're kind of finding ourselves at the same time.
Yeah, that's why it's become a very popular hobby now. And I don't know where I read a whole article talking about it, that since COVID and stuff, and like people are so alone, and then they can try to connect, you know. So it's another way to connect with your present and your past. Yeah. Right. So it is fun, but you have to be patient. And like I say, I'm showing a lot of, not everything is online. Again, your librarians know about a lot of resources, and they can help network with other libraries too. That's their skill set, is research. So they can definitely help. Yes, ma'am.
But I do also want to mention, I think in my situation, my experience is that it's very difficult to look back as well. Because I can get very depressed thinking about the past,
Right.
back at the past.
Right.
Some things are not just roses and butterflies. And
For sure. I understand, believe me.
It's really difficult.
Yeah, right.
It's hard to look back and remember those things.
I know. I'm doing research on somebody born in the displaced person camps, and his parents are Holocaust survivors. So I'm delving into a lot of people that died. So yeah, it can get very heavy, very quick. Mhm.
Well, you did make a mention, you might be surprised to think about what you're looking for, to all of us.
Right.
We may not want to see some of it.
Well, especially with the DNA, because then you can find out, you know, that your mom had an affair and your dad isn't your dad, and, you know, that's gonna like boom, hit you in the face, you know, so the DNA stuff is very dramatic. You know, the other records usually not as dramatic, but I had a client who wanted to find only like wealthy, successful relatives, yeah, like she wanted to hear about the lawyers, but then I found her family on Maxwell Street on the west side, and she didn't, or like somebody who drove a truck, because she didn't care about him, she didn't want to know anything about him. That was the weirdest, that was the weirdest thing.
You get everybody, you don't get the
That was funny though, she's like, tell me about the lawyers.
Oh my God.
So yes, you get to choose who you want to learn about.
But on the other hand, you know, there's also a positive side. I found out that my great-grandfather had 16 kids. So there's a fun side.
Yeah, there is fun, there is fun.
Definitely
No birth control, lots of people, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know it's after 8, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I feel close involved, and especially if you're doing one that has what we call provenance with them. If this is people that overflow and you have, I mean, the person who made it, you have to see the story behind it. Yeah. I find it very, very interesting. So if anybody does any things like that, always make sure you make things or that we always talk about the document. Oh, that's cool. Today to document the items that you're gonna pass on to your relatives. Oh, that's so they know. And then one I have photos of the ladies that made it for the 3 generations of the council. So in your relatives, you can people.
Yeah, actually, there's somebody in my genealogy society who did a book with items, you know, a picture of the item and then the story behind it, or memories, or, you know, who it was from, or any memories that came up, you know, and it's just a whole book of items from the grandma's house or something like that. So yeah, yes.
My former mother-in-law is Debbie Kroopkin, and the family has reunions like every 3 years. Everybody gets together. And she had like 9 brothers and sisters. But she made a quilt, and it's in a tree, and it has branches for each of the children.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At the bottom, but each leaf, there's a leaf on there for each person of the family.
That's huge. Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I did a tree on my wedding invitation. My sister's an artist, and I had her do a tree. So I had to quick help my husband research his family, because I wanted as many branches as I could fit on the card. But I had to get the same number on his side, you know, the same number of generations. So I'm like, come on, we got to do some research. But it was fun. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
I'll put my business cards here. What happened with this blue? Oh my God, the poor printer. Oh, sure. Yeah, she's going to send you the computer version, so you can just click on the links and you don't have to retype them all.